I will be teaching 3 emergency surgeries. All of you are surgeons, you are practicing surgeons, or you are surgeons in verge of your completion. So what I will try to do is that I will try to teach you like in an exam, but remember, the discussions that we have is definitely not in an exam. It is about your real life, and you as a practicing surgeon, what are the challenges that you will face, what are the challenges that we have faced, and how to overcome those challenges. Okay, and then, so definitely, as I have said, this is a postgraduate tier lecture. So it is expected that you have seen these operations, you have done these operations, okay, and preferably taught these operations. So let us start. Now, whenever someone is asking you for an examination, tell me the steps of an operation. It can be a card, it can be an viva voce, whatever may be the situation, but still, say for example, you get a card or someone asks you, doc, tell me the steps of a resection anastomosis of the small bowel. So I've not written small bowel, I will have it again. Now, whenever someone asks you something to comment upon, always say about something called as indications. Just a minute. Yeah. So the first things first, we talk about any operative goes by indications. When will you take that thing out? Now, the first things when a resection anastomosis of the bowel is, again, either the bowel is dead, okay, that means it is a non-viable piece of intestine, or the bowel is dangerous. Now that means that, say for example, the bowel has a cancer, and these are the arteries that supply. So this is the cancer in the bowel, okay. Or we cannot do anything with that bowel. It is damn not repairable. Now this damn not repairable will indicate those areas which either have a stricture, and that stricture you do not know the diagnosis of, and hence you need a biopsy, okay, or you have a short segment stricture. Now again, people are not exactly very sure about what to do what, okay, or you have a patient with a trauma to the intestine, where what happens is more than half of the circumference, that means if you consider that this is the bowel, more than about half of the circumference of the bowel is not, or is viable, or if this is the mesentery, that means what I will do quickly for you guys is that I will draw a picture of the mesentery, and when you have a piece of mesentery, just a second, yeah, so when I have a piece of the mesentery, now the tear in the mesentery could have been in two directions. One, the tear could have been, the tear could have been in a longitudinal direction, which will usually mean that blood vessels which are coming into this mesentery, out of them only one blood vessel may have been injured. But still, mind you, if that blood vessel is injured, we'll come to that very quickly, even one small area of the bowel is not getting very healthy, but the rest of the segments of the bowel, well, they are having good blood supply. So maybe you may go away by not doing a resection. However, if the tear in the mesentery, as you can see in the picture that I have made, is somewhat like this, which is a transverse tear. So either it is a transverse tear, which will mean that there will be a segment of the intestine whose vascularity is not adequate, then it is better to think about resection rather than think about a longitudinal tear, where always keep your fingers crossed and pray to God that this segment of the intestine has a viability. So it is a viable piece of intestine. So these are the things to remember in this. So when will you reset? A transverse tear in the mesentery? Yes, always. because it is a long segment area. Okay, next, when will you resect? It is also is dead, it is dangerous like in an cancer, okay, or it is damn not repairable like in a stricture where you do not have a biopsy. Now what happens if you do have a biopsy proof of the stricture and the patient has the stricture? Well, you see, that is now a very difficult situation. So rather than go to the rest of the thing, because as I've said, this is a postgraduate discussion. Whenever you get a patient with multiple strictures, because in a postgraduate forum, this is what is usually the doubt. Say, for example, this is the DJ and this is the IC. And in this DJ to IC, a patient comes with multiple strictures in the intestine. So this patient, as you see, has multiple strictures in the intestine. Now the only question to you will be that, so this is one stricture, this is stricture one, okay, I am drawing many strictures together now. Now guys, so stricture 1, stricture 2, stricture 3, stricture 4 and stricture 5. Across the whole length of intestine there are strictures. This patient has a Crohn's disease. The only question to do is that which one will you resect, which one will you think about a bypass, is the only question that you have to do, or which one will do a stricturoplasty. Remember, all of them are benign conditions and all of them is going to ask you. Now guys, important points. Number one is that the first thing, when you have a multiple stricture across the intestine like this, the first and the most important question is, which of these strictures is creating the nuisance? Remember, this is the first and the most important question that you have. Please understand that this is the first, the most important question that you do have. Say, for example, we are talking about a patient with an intestinal obstruction. Then what? Very simple. Say, for example, stricture 3 is the main pathology, and it is not that others are not doing problems, they are. But how do you know that is this one? Very simple. You see the gap between the dilated loop of the bowel and between the collapsed loop of the bowel. So that's it. It is so simple. If there is something that is distal, that is collapsed, and there is proximal, that is dilated, that means very easily what you understand is that this stricture is, or this site is one that is creating the nuisance. Now what to do? See, the story is very simple. If it is a short segment stricture, so the second question is what to do with this stricture. So if it is a short segment stricture, okay, and the rest of the bowel in question, as you can see, is healthy, as you can see in this picture. So what we will do is that this area, okay, may undergo a stricturoplasty. Remember, provided that this bowel is normal. Now what do I mean by normal? That means the bowel is soft, the bowel is elastic. Most importantly, what happens is, as you can see in the picture, what is going to happen is that in this bowel, please appreciate that the mesentery is up to this. In this bowel, the mesentery has crept up till the bowel. So that means whenever you are going for a stricturoplasty, the main pathology is kind of concentrated here, and you can very easily do a stricturoplasty. The third question that you have is, so if it is not this part, but there is a long segment of narrowing, then what are you going to do? Well guys, then you have to take a call between doing a bypass versus doing a resection. Now, as I have said, if your now things that will go more in favor of bypass rather than resection will be that the diagnosis is known. Okay, the next part is the patient has a history of multiple resections before. Number 2, the length of the small bowel is very quickly approaching 100 centimeters. So under these conditions, remember that you can cut out the piece of intestine in a patient with a Crohn's. But remember, whatever you are cutting out, the patient is losing something. Intestine is not growing. So on the other hand, when to favor a dissection is that you do not know the diagnosis, unknown diagnosis, or you suspect that there has been a cancer in that as understood by presence of adenopathy, or remember that neuroendocrine tumors are not that rare that we think of, but neuroendocrine tumors are associated with desmoplastic reaction. That means lots of fibrosis in the mesentery. Now, so kindly mute your audios, guys. So desmoplastic reactions in the mesentery. Under these conditions, it is better to think of this one. Number two, remember that there is adequate length of both proximal and distal intestine. So what is very important is that, and your patient is hemodynamically stable, okay, to undergo the operation. So these are the points that goes more in favor of a resection rather than a bypass. Okay, so these are the points to consider. So I will again recap. So whenever you get a patient with multiple strictures in the small intestine, remember that it is always good to think about doing a resection, bypass, and stricturoplasty. First of all, ask yourself which one is the stricture is producing this nuisance. If this is the stricture that produces the nuisance, go for a stricturoplasty if it is usually a short segment versus a long segment, which you will either need a bypass or a resection. Now, as I have said, to do a stricturoplasty, it is important that you know the diagnosis. If you do not know the diagnosis, then it is always important to go for a resection. Mind you that thing that you are resecting out may be a malignancy or a neuroendocrine tumor like a carcinoid. So always remember that if your diagnosis is known like a Crohn's or a other diseases like radiation stricture, that is still good. If you do not know that, it is important to know about a dissection. So this is the first part, that a practicing surgeon or a postgraduate is asked in an exam rather than being asked the steps of an operation. So
Excuse me, sir.
this is the, yeah, please.
Sir, is there a way to define a short and long segment stricture, sir?
No, I do not know of yet, sir. Because see, some people have said that less than 2 centimeters are short, more than that are long. Again, so but they are not very standardized ones, believe me. Some people have said that no, if it goes by more than one arcade in the mesentery, it is said to be long rather than short, which is less than one arcade in the mesentery. Okay, right. So this is the first part. The second question was this one. The third question is, now, this is an important question for you guys. How do you know that these, so we have done what had to be done with stricture number 3. So what we did was that we did a resection and then we joined this piece of intestine. Okay, very good. Now, the third and the most important question is, what you have with you is this stricture, this stricture, this stricture, and this stricture. How do you know that these 4 strictures, particularly I am more worried with these strictures because they are distal to the anastomosis. How do you know that these strictures are not going to produce an immediate obstruction? Forget 1 year later. It could be that an anastomosis could just blow up, boom. How do you know that this S3, S4, there's all of these things are adequate? Okay, does anyone of you know any way that you know how to assess a stricture? What is the way that you guys, so have I made this point clear, guys? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so any opinions, because all of you have worked in the emergency or you are working in the emergency. So this is a part of the bowel that I have resected. Okay, this is one stricture and this is another stricture, sir. I have made the picture in front of you. So we have taken out S3. I am happy that S3 has been resected. Now my question is, what about S4 and S5? So with S2 and S1. Okay, what is your opinion? How to know that S4 and S5 are not going to produce a problem? Hello? Hello? Any idea, guys?
We can assess the patency.
How, sir? How do you assess the patency? This is the
You can
question.
see you can occlude one side. You can occlude like close to S3,
Very
and then
good, very
and
good.
then
Right,
see
sir.
the ease with which the content flow through the structured part.
Exactly, right. So now seeing the patency, as you have said very rightly, sir, can be done by you having a subjective way, isn't it? So what you said is exactly what I always do that. And what this gentleman said was that what you try to do is that this is the proximal part of the bowel, this is the distal part of the bowel. You try to squeeze in the contents from proximal to distal and from distal to proximal, two-way. Now make it gently and try to use your two fingers to do that. Remember, we are talking in an emergency open laparotomy. We are not talking of a laparoscopy. In a laparoscopy, you can do that, but it's not a very easy job to do that. So in an open surgery, you gently push in the contents from proximal to distal, as the gentleman has said, and really is an subjective way. But your assistant is very, say, critical of you. He says that, sir, I am not happy, sir. So do you know of any objective ways to assess that? Anyone in the group? You see, I am a very tough assistant. I am asking you. You are my teacher.
I think objectively we can measure the pressure, the pressure at the point of the structure.
Okay, sir, I could not understand.
Endoscopy, sir.
Yes, endoscopy.
Intraoperative endoscopy, sir, important thing. First of all, how many of you have ever done an intraoperative endoscopy? Tell me that one. And number two is that the endoscope, which endoscope are you going to take? Okay. See, this is the beauty about having an operative surgery. You get so beautiful interactions. I really liked it. You see, has Dr. Sanjay Devakshi joined in? Hello? Hello? No, I don't think so. Shilajit, has Dr. Bakshi joined in? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Has Dr. Sanjay Devakshi joined in?
Sarah is there, but Sarah has muted.
Right. No issues.
Yes, sir.
No. So what is important in objective is that there are many ways, as you have said. One is intraoperative endoscopy, but believe me, intraoperative endoscopy is not an easy way, and you have to use an enteroscope. Now, some people say that, oh, wow, enteroscope is difficult to get. Why don't you use a colonoscope? But believe me, guys, getting your gastroenterologist to come at 2 o'clock in the night to you in the emergency theater, oh my God, impossible. Now, what is the easier way is that you use a Foley's catheter, okay, and inflate the balloon of an 8 French Foley catheter with a 3 ml of saline or water, whatever you like, okay. And then what we do is that, say this is the stricture, and then we pass the Foley's catheter, okay. Inflate the balloon and then pull it out. Did you understand the idea, guys? Hello? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We understand.
Okay. Did you
Yes,
understand
sir.
the idea? So isn't it
Yes,
a very
sir.
simple idea?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
That okay,
Yes,
I'm
sir.
not
Very
telling you to
simple.
use a 10 French or a 12 French, because that lumen, because the 10 French Foley's catheter has a bigger lumen, isn't it? But 8 French Foley's catheter is easily available in your hospital, and you can inflate it with that 3 ml balloon and just give a gentle pull. Remember that if someone of a 3 ml thing is getting stuck up, that is really bad, and that means that this stricture needs some amount of some surgery to be done, either a bypass or a stricturoplasty, whatever you like to do. So these are the things to understand in this part. Okay. Now, so as I have said that we have told about the first part is about taking a decision when to do a resection versus a stricturoplasty. Now, the next part of the thing is that, so what happens if there is multiple perforations? Because in developing countries like India, well, you usually get patients with multiple diseases, say for example enteric fever, etc., which can lead up with multiple perforations. And as you can see, this gentleman had multiple perforations, and what are you going to do? Believe me, if this is a scenario where the perforations are situated with a gap of more than 10 centimeters, that means in a 10 centimeter gap, you usually get 2 to 3 arcade vessels. If they're more than that, the simplest way is take out the most proximal one as a stoma and then go for a repair of the others, as you will do. Either it can be a 2-layer repair, it can be a single layer repair in that. But remember that before you do a repair in any intestinal perforation, okay, try to close it transversely rather than longitudinally. Number 2 is that always refresh the margins, always refresh the margins. Okay, that means do a sharp cutting with a sharp scissors and then take 2 sutures on these sides, pull it on these aspects, and then go for a transverse closure of this one. What is the suture material that you will use during the closure of this repair? Well, my preference is always a PDS suture, which I feel is a monofilament suture, and remember that has a very good, particularly a 3O PDS has a good knot quality. Monofilament, because in a bacterial infection, this is a very good suture to have. The strength of the suture is great. Particularly remember that it is a delayed absorbable suture, which takes about around 100 days to get absorbed. So these are the advantages that I use PDS. And if you don't have PDS, then what? Then well, you can use polyglactin or Vicryl sutures as well. But remember that Vicryl sutures have the property of knots which are not that great. So at least tie 4 knots after you have done or after each suture. So please remember this one, Vicryl and this. What you are not going to use is catgut suture, because remember catgut is a protein and this one gets digested when you are repairing a perforation. So please don't use a catgut. What about silk to be used? Well, if you are using silk, guys, remember that, because I have worked in many kinds of operation theater, try to use a 3O silk or a 3O mer silk, and then try to do it in a single layer extra mucosal. Now, what do you mean by this single layer extra mucosal? A single layer extra mucosal means that if this is the loop of the bowel, you see, these are the 2 loops of the bowel that I am drawing side by side. A full thickness by it will mean all layers. So this is what a full thickness means. Whereas if you take a single layer extra mucosal, that means you leave the mucosa. Remember that the seromuscular, the submucosa is the strongest layer of the gut, and your suture very quick, beautifully sits into that. And silk is a very good suture into for this repair. So this talks about extramucosal sutures and how to do the repair. Now come to dissection part of the bowel. So let me complete this part and then we'll take up questions. So let us talk about the dissection of the bowel part. Now guys, whenever you do a resection of a part of the small bowel or a part of the large bowel, whatever you do, remember both of them are defined or delineated by a very simple principle. Ask yourself, or in an exam, ask the very simplistic way. Are you doing it for a benign condition? Are you doing it for a malignant condition? Just remember this simple way. Now, by malignant, I mean all forms of malignancy. It could be a GIST, it could be an adenocarcinoma, it could be a neuroendocrine tumor like a carcinoid, it could be a lymphoma. Doesn't matter what you are taking out, because you will not get a second chance to take that thing out. So it is better to take always the artery that is feeding the vessel. So if this is the artery that is feeding it from the arcade, as you have seen in the picture, and you find that this is the pathology, I think you can see the pathology. Always remember the principle that goes is that you are going to ligate the artery as lowest possible possible, practicable as feasible. So the dissection specimen with the margin exactly looks like a cone or a slice of a pizza. Well, see, I am getting hungry now. Dinner time, 8 o'clock. I'm getting hungry, guys. So it looks like a pizza. That means whenever you get a piece of a malignancy, if your specimen is looking like a slice of a pizza, this is what I teach my residents, and they say it is then the most beautiful specimens. Are you guys getting hungry also? I'm drawing a pizza, intestine pizza. Okay, as you see. So this is the pizza-like thing. The only important point is that when you send it to your pathologist, remember that this is a artery down here. This artery, please keep a long suture down here so that this count can done. And now some people get a little bit panicky about how many nodes you are retrieving in the specimen. Well, in an emergency, it is difficult to count those nodes. But as I have said, try to go as low as possible as practicable and try to take a clearance at least of a 5 centimeter margin on both the sides of a healthy bowel. Okay, so this is what is important in a malignancy. Now it can be, now in a large bowel, remember the right hemicolectomy, left hemicolectomies are all based on the vascular pedicle ligation. But in a small bowel, it is a Spitzer hypothesis, you may say. For a benign one, the story is not exactly like that. In a benign pathology, mind you, say for example, a bowel gangrene, strangulated hernia, and this part. The basic idea is that these are the pieces of intestines, the vessels that are supplying. And if these are the vessels that are supplying, remember the mesentery has not done anything wrong. And if the mesentery has not done anything wrong, so unnecessarily, again, so you are not required to take a lot of mesentery. Now, if this is the healthy piece of the bowel, which is of this color, on the other hand, understand that this is the dusky piece of the bowel, okay, and this one is the gangrenous piece of the bowel. So I'll make it more black so that you can remember. So this is the gangrenous piece of the bowel. So guys, which one are you going to take in your dissection margin? Can any one of you tell me which one will be your dissecting line? Hello, which one will be your dissecting line?
We take from the healthy part.
Very
We take
good.
from
Very nice. Why do you take all these areas? Because sir, we know that we will not get a second chance, and hence for all benign pathologies, mind you, ligating the mesentery is important, but more important is to understand what is the line of demarcation for a benign pathology. Now, what do you mean by benign pathology? Now, benign pathology could mean a trauma. The benign pathology could mean a perforation. Benign pathology, no, not a tumor perforation, please. Benign pathology could mean an bad piece of the bowel or a gangrenous piece of the bowel. Say, for example, an hernia. Or benign pathology could be a vascular cause. Like we had one army gentleman was in the army, and then this gentleman had a condition called as mesenteric venous thrombosis. We had another gentleman with a mesenteric arterial ischemia. Okay, so these conditions. Remember that in both these conditions, the usual picture is that you always get one piece of the intestine which is always black in color like this. Okay, now sometimes it is more blackish. The rest of the surrounding piece of the intestine, believe me guys, exactly has this color. The surrounding piece of the intestine, I like drawing pictures. The surrounding piece of the intestine has this color. Okay, and then comes the most healthy part of the intestine, which has this color, which is a light shade of pink. Okay. Always remember your resection line to be on the safer side always has to be through the pink tissues. Then determine how much amount of mesentery should I require. If you have now understood what mesentery you will require, now it is time for you to understand then what is the vessels that are supplying that, and why should I ligate those vessels so that I get a good vascularity in the stump. So bowel first and then followed by the mesentery approach then. Now if you talk about the mesentery approach, so this is the approach that you need to know. Next one to remember, this is the benign disease. Unnecessarily don't create problems by going in deep. So this is a philosophy that needs to be understood. That means you can remain close to the bowel. Now see the mistake that I did in the beginning. I shouldn't have ligated this part, isn't it? Because this is the part that is going to remain. So what I will do is that I will ligate here. I will ligate here, this, and this. Okay. So this is the way I do that. And there are many ways to ligate the vessels in the mesentery, but preferably is that in an edematous thickened mesentery, it is always good to gradually strip off the mesentery, identify the vessel, then put your right angle to isolate the vessel and ligate it with a good surgical surgeon's knot. Believe me, many beginning surgeons or beginners have really landed up with complications because edematous tissues will bleed. So it is preferable to ligate it at least twice with a good knot. What suture material? As I have said, for beginners, you can use a 203 silk, but whatever you do, mind you that their knot has to be 100%, not 100%, maybe 110% okay. What will you do on this side? Many people apply a bunch of artery forceps and hemostats. I feel that is extremely clumsy. While you are doing, your assistant could always tie a knot for a practice into that. So if you are the surgeon and if you have a junior colleague who is not so good in knotting, please teach him or her to ligate on the specimen side. But do ligate on the specimen side. Don't keep it unligated because it produces a loss of blood from the specimen, which is not a very happy thing to have during an emergency surgery. So this is how we ligate the mesentery. Some people illuminate the mesentery against a light. Believe me, in an emergency with a thickened mesentery, it becomes a very difficult job. People who have a thick mesentery, lots of fat in the mesentery, patients with Crohn's disease in these, or patients who have desmoids and desmoplastic reactions like in carcinoids, always be very extra cautious with the mesentery. Always have an extra caution in the mesentery. If you are not cautious in these situations, believe me guys, mesenteric vessels are going to bleed, and that's not going to be a good job. So this completes this part. Now after this is done, if you have done the resection, now previously we used to, now the next question is what to do in this area. Should I apply a clamp or should I not apply a clamp? Well, the usual practice that I should do is that yes, you should apply a clamp, but that clamp always has to be checked whether it is a soft occlusion clamp. Now, there are many surgeons nowadays who use a vascular clamp for this in that. The conventional teaching that we had was that we used to use a crushing clamp on the specimen side. People in the older days had an instrument called as Pearce crushing clamp, and they used to have an occlusion clamp on the patient side. Okay. Now nowadays, believe me, we do not understand. We do not have crushing clamp and occlusion clamp. It makes the job very clumsy. So what is very easy to do is that you put two occlusion clamp. Better is use a vascular clamp instead. Remember, occlusion clamps are just to occlude the lumen. That's it, so that the bowel contents don't come out. These areas can be very easily ligated with a silk suture, okay, and you have a good margin. So this talks about this part, makes your operation much less clumsy, and then you can take out the specimen. Now after you have taken out the specimen, so your specimen is going to look like this. So your specimen with all these ties are going to look like this. If this is the necrotic piece of the bowel, always remember there has to be a zone of early necrosis or doubtful necrosis, and the last part is this always has to have a healthy margin. Now in the times of how do you know that your bowel is going to survive? That means the difference between a healthy bowel versus a non-healthy bowel, healthy bowel versus a non-healthy bowel. Now the most important part to understand, number one, is peristalsis. A healthy bowel has a good peristalsis. This is a doubtful peristalsis. Point number two is the color. Now the color of a bowel should be seen after you tell your anesthesiologist to stop the nitrous, give 100% oxygen for 5 minutes. Okay, so remember he is going to stop the nitrous and then give this one, and then you apply some warm mops. Now warm doesn't mean boiling water, we had a patient with burns also, so warm mops. Whereas the color here does not return to pink. If it does not return to pink, it is not healthy. Please take that bowel out. Number three is mesenteric circulation. Now mesenteric circulation can be felt, but believe me, in an emergency at 2 o'clock in the night, you may be feeling your own finger pulsations rather than the mesenteric pulsations. So it becomes a very tough option to understand about a mesenteric circulation. Okay, hence people did something called as an ICG, which has stood the test of time for about a decade now, and this has been the test of choice if you do have the facility to done. Well, majority of hospitals in the world, I'm not talking developing countries, in the world even, do not have facilities for an emergency ICG to be done. I'm not talking elective scenarios, and hence this is only reserved for exams. So this is all about this part. Now what to do? Now guys, you have two ends of bowel. Now you have two ends of bowel, very simply, and you have a mesentery. Please remember, always it is a good habit to keep one of the tails of the sutures very long. So please keep one suture. If you have used a silk, please keep them long. Long because at the end of the operation, you are not going to forget that I have a mesentery to close. Your assistant is going to tell you, sir, what are you going to do with that long suture? So remember that long suture is going to remind you that you have a mesentery to close. Now, how to close the intestine? Again, that depends more upon your local practice than science. Two ways to do. If the lumen of the bowel looks okay, now how to know that it looks okay? The answer, guys, is very simple. Your vascularity must be at this margin. If you have not seen this marginal vessel, things are really going to turn bad. Always remember, the small intestine can survive for a length of 4 centimeters beyond this. This is the philosophy of an ileostomy. But in a real resection anastomosis, please don't take that chance, because if it really leaks, this is not an ileostomy. You are going to have a bad part. So you can afford a margin of maximum 5 millimeter from the cut margin to have a vessel. If you have seen the vessel, you should be very happy. If you have palpated the vessel, yes, I should be happy that yes, there is a vessel to anastomose. Now see the lumen. if your lumen is of an appropriate diameter, that means same diameter, you can, this is something that I say, you can do an end-to-end anastomosis, provided your lumen has the same diameter, same vascularity. Okay, so this is all. What happens if the lumen has a disparity? Now, if the lumen has a disparity, now this is an old teaching for last around 50 to 60 years. What if the lumen has a disparity like this? Well, this is the dilated part, this is the distal collapse part. Then we used to measure this area, say for example X, and then what we did was that from this point we laid a scale or a piece of wet gauze exactly in the distance X, and then we used to take a scissors, and then what we did was that we gradually made a cut like this, and this cut that we made was an oblique cut and was called as a Chittle cut. So I hope you have understood. So from this side, the only thing that I have done is that I have made a cut like this, and so that your bowel now looks like this one. So this will be joined with this angle A to A dashed and B to B dashed like this. So this is the way that this is joined. So this is all about an end-to-end anastomosis. Now, how are you going to do the end-to-end anastomosis again? All depends upon what your practice is. And in a postgraduate exam, this is what you can exactly say, because your examiner is a surgeon. Either you can do a two-layer repair, which means technically enough, again can be done in two ways. You can do a single layer extramucosal repair, or you can do a single layer through and through repair. That means all layers. Now, if you work with pediatric surgeons, well, they usually do this. If you work with GI surgeons, they do this. Well, and if you work with the rest of other surgeons and a couple of surgeons across, they do the standard 4-layer, which means the suture 1 takes into the outer seromuscular, and the same suture is now rotated on the 4th layer, and in the same suture you rotate in the 4th layer to give the outer seromuscular, whereas the second and the third layer is the through and the through, posterior through and through, and anterior through and through. So these are the 2 points to remember. How to take the angle starting with a conel and a reverse conel depends upon all the technical nitty-gritties what you are going to do. In a postgraduate examination purpose, you are not going to be asked about how to take a conel. That is done in a skill station, if you ever have a bowel anastomosis in a skill station. So in an exam, how will you do an end-to-end anastomosis can be done by these 3 ways. I have not talked about staplers yet, mind you. So this is one way to join. The thing that I do not do this is that I always feel, guys, the vascularity of the end of the bowel is something that always scares me. I always feel that this artery is a very artery of betrayal, you may say this one. And exactly at the time that you really require, the artery undergoes a spasm. And I really have a big question mark about the future then after that. And hence, what I will always prefer, and the rest of the world prefers, is you close the end and then go for a standard side-to-side anastomosis. So this is the standard side-to-side anastomosis, means that you take this loop of the bowel, okay, this is the proximal loop, I have shaded it in blue, okay, remember this one, see the direction of peristalsis, and remember, now take the distal loop, see the direction of peristalsis, These are the two mesenteries. Remember, what I will do is that from the cut margin, keep a gap of at least 5 millimeter, and then take this suture in this area. So take this area between these areas to have a good overlap and a tension-free anastomosis. Now, after the resection anastomosis is done, so after you have done, what to see after the anastomosis is done? Always remember what to see after the anastomosis is complete. Well, after the anastomosis is complete, always remember three things that sir has said today or I have said today. Number one, check the lumen for patency. How do you do that? It is very easily done by you taking your fingers and pinching the bowel across the anastomosis. Remember that this is the two walls of the anastomosis. This is one wall, this is another wall. So always pinch in between the two fingers. If it goes by one finger, yes, it's a good anastomosis. Number two, there should be no distal obstruction. This is a golden rule that you will obey. Number three, always close the mesentery. So this completes what needs to be talked about in and completion of a dissection anastomosis. So this is all about the steps of a dissection anastomosis. What can go wrong and what are the complications of this resection anastomosis will be, number one is a leak. Now the leak can be a complete anastomotic dehiscence or a partial anastomotic dehiscence. A partial anastomotic dehiscence can lead to an intra-abdominal abscess, which may land up with a fistula or an enterocutaneous fistula. A complete anastomotic leak will definitely lead to a peritonitis, and we need you to re-explore and then probably to think about a stoma rather than this one. Whereas this one is managed according to the lines of an enterocutaneous fistula. The second complication is a stricture. The third complication is a rare one, is bleeding from the anastomotic site. So this is all about this point. Talking about staplers, if you do have a stapler access in an emergency, makes your job, believe me, very, 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 very easy. For the small bowel, always take a blue cartridge, whichever company you are using. It can be Medtronic, it can be Ethicon. Always take a blue cartridge, 65 millimeter length of the cartridge, so that your anastomotic length is about 63 millimeter. So when we'll be having a class on staplers, you will get to see that the staple line is usually 1 millimeter short. It looks like, the anastomotic line is usually 1 millimeter short. So this is the blue cartridge in a stapler. We always use a linear cutting stapler or a linear cutter. That means what is done is that if this is the loop of the bowel and this is the area that is bad, we take a stapler to transect, okay, and after we have the two transected ends, that means this is one end which is transected, this is another end which is transected. Very simple. Now you can go in for a stapled anastomosis or you can go in for an open anastomosis. Depends upon which one you trust more. Usually if you have a stapler in an emergency, it is very logical to go for a side-to-side stapled anastomosis. So this completes things that you should know in a dissection anastomosis of the bowel. Any questions or queries, please? Hello? Any questions or any queries, please?